Welcome to my channel, and before you continue watching, I want you to ask yourself one question. What if the greatest power you have been searching for is not outside you, not hidden in money, success, fame, or the approval of other people, but quietly waiting inside your own mind? What if the reason you feel tired, stressed, distracted, afraid, or unable to focus is not because your life is impossible, but because your mind has never been given the chance to become still? And what if 5 quiet minutes every day could begin changing the way you think, learn, speak, work, and face the problems that once seemed too big for you? Today, we are going to discover meditation in a completely different way. Not as something boring, mysterious, or reserved for monks sitting alone on mountains, but as a powerful skill that can help ordinary people become calmer, stronger, more focused, disciplined, and confident. Imagine waking up in the morning and, instead of immediately reaching for your phone, taking a moment to breathe. Imagine facing a stressful conversation without instantly becoming angry. Imagine feeling fear before doing something important but still having enough courage to move forward. Imagine studying English without becoming frustrated every time you forget a word, making a mistake, or struggling to understand a sentence. This is where meditation becomes powerful, because meditation does not promise to remove every problem from your life. It teaches you how to face problems without allowing them to control you. Many people believe meditation means sitting quietly with closed eyes and somehow stopping every thought inside the mind. But that is not the real purpose. Meditation is not about becoming a person who never thinks, never worries, or never feels fear. It is about becoming aware of what is happening inside you. It is learning to notice your thoughts, emotions, worries, fears, and reactions without immediately becoming controlled by them. Most people move through their entire day without realizing how much noise exists inside their minds. They wake up and check messages. They scroll through social media. They compare their lives with strangers. They think about yesterday. They worry about tomorrow. They remember embarrassing moments. They imagine problems that have not happened yet. They jump from one thought to another until the day ends, and then they wonder why they feel mentally exhausted. The body may be tired after work, but the mind can become tired simply from carrying thousands of thoughts. Meditation gives the mind a place to rest. Think about a room filled with noise. If everyone inside is speaking at the same time, it becomes difficult to understand anything. But when the room becomes quiet, even a soft voice becomes clear. Your mind can be the same. When thoughts are constantly racing, it becomes difficult to know what you truly feel, what you truly want, and what you should do next. Meditation creates a little space between you and the noise. It teaches you to sit quietly and observe. A thought may appear, and instead of following it, you notice it. A worry may arrive, and instead of building an entire story around it, you breathe. A fear may rise, and instead of immediately running away, you remain present. Then you gently return your attention to your breathing. This simple action may seem small, but it is actually a powerful form of mental training. Beginners often say, I cannot meditate because my mind has too many thoughts. But having thoughts does not mean you are failing. Thoughts are a natural part of being human. The goal is not to destroy them. The goal is to stop allowing every thought to control your attention. Imagine standing beside a road and watching cars pass. You can see each car without jumping into every vehicle. Thoughts are similar. They come, they stay for a moment, and they leave. Meditation teaches you to watch them without becoming trapped inside them. This is one of the most important lessons you can learn, because in everyday life, people often mistake their thoughts for reality. One negative thought appears, and suddenly, they believe they are failures. One fearful thought appears, and they decide they cannot succeed. One mistake happens, and they believe their entire future is ruined. But meditation teaches you to create distance. You begin saying, I am having a fearful thought, instead of, I am afraid, and therefore I must stop. You begin saying, I am worried, instead of, something terrible will definitely happen. That small difference creates freedom. You discover that a thought can exist without becoming your decision. Fear can exist without becoming your action. Doubt can exist without becoming your identity. This is the beginning of inner strength. Meditation also helps you understand yourself. Many people spend years studying the world while never studying their own minds. They know what other people are doing, what is trending online, and what strangers think. But they do not understand why they become angry so quickly, why they constantly compare themselves, why they feel empty, or why they cannot concentrate. Meditation brings awareness. You begin noticing patterns. You may realize that certain thoughts always appear when you are tired. You may notice that your phone makes you restless. You may discover that comparison steals your happiness. You may understand that fear has been stopping you from speaking English or trying new things. Awareness is powerful because you cannot change what you refuse to notice. Once you see a pattern clearly, you can begin changing it. You can say, "This habit is wasting my time." You can say, "This thought is making me anxious." You can say, "This reaction is hurting my relationships." Then you can choose differently. This is why meditation is much more than sitting silently. It is learning how your mind works so you can stop living automatically. It is learning to pause before reacting, breathe before speaking, and think before making decisions. A calm mind does not mean a life without problems. It means that when problems arrive, you are less likely to panic immediately. You can ask yourself, what is actually happening? What can I control? What is my next step? These questions bring you back to reality. Instead of fighting imaginary disasters in your head, you focus on the situation in front of you. Instead of wasting energy worrying about everything that might happen tomorrow, you use your energy to handle what you can do today. This calmness is especially valuable when learning English. Learning a language requires patience, focus, and courage. You will forget words. You will make grammar mistakes. You may pronounce something incorrectly. Sometimes you will listen to a sentence several times and still not understand it. A restless mind may become frustrated and say, "I will never learn this." But a trained mind can pause and say, "I do not understand it yet, but I can practice again." Meditation helps develop that patience. It teaches you that progress does not need to be immediate to be real. Every time you return to your breath, you practice returning. Every time you return to your English lesson after distraction, you practice focus. Every time you speak despite fear of mistakes, you practice courage. Slowly, these small actions become a stronger version of you. The most important thing to understand is that meditation does not magically transform your life overnight. It changes you gradually, from the inside outward. Your thoughts become easier to observe, your emotions become easier to manage, your attention becomes easier to direct, your reactions become less automatic. You begin discovering that you do not have to believe everything your mind tells you. You do not have to follow every distraction. You do not have to obey every fear. You can breathe, observe, and choose. And perhaps that is the hidden power most people never discover. The moment you learn to control your attention, you begin taking back control of your life. Because where your attention goes, your energy follows. If your attention is constantly trapped in fear, comparison, and regret, your energy disappears there. But if you learn to bring your attention back to the present, back to your goals, back to your learning, and back to the people who truly matter, your life begins to change. So, meditation is not about escaping life. It is about becoming present enough to finally experience it. It is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming aware. It is not about removing every thought. It is about choosing which thoughts deserve your attention. And the journey begins with something incredibly simple. Sit down, breathe slowly, notice what is happening inside you, and when your mind wanders, gently return. Do it again tomorrow, then again the next day. You may not notice a dramatic change immediately, but something inside you will slowly begin to shift. You will start discovering that calmness is not weakness, silence is not emptiness, and stillness is not wasted time. Sometimes, the quietest moments are where the strongest version of you begins to grow. As Daniel continued his journey, he slowly began to understand that a calm mind could do something remarkable. It could change the way a person experienced the same life. The problems around him had not disappeared. His responsibilities were still there. His work still demanded attention. His family still had difficulties. His future was still uncertain. Yet something inside him was different. Before, every problem had felt like an emergency. Now, he could pause and look at the situation more clearly. He discovered that a calm mind is not powerful because it has no problems. It is powerful because it does not panic in front of every problem. Think about a glass of water that is constantly shaken. The water becomes cloudy and you cannot see through it. But when you place the glass on a table and allow it to become still, the dirt slowly settles and the water becomes clear. The human mind can work in a similar way. When you are constantly stressed, distracted, and overwhelmed, it becomes difficult to see what is actually happening. You may make decisions based on fear instead of wisdom. You may say things you later regret. You may give up on opportunities because your mind is already convinced that failure is coming. But when you become calm, you create space to think. You can ask better questions. You can see choices that were invisible when you were panicking. This is why meditation can become a powerful tool for anyone who wants to improve their life. A calm mind can learn, a calm mind can listen, a calm mind can focus. A calm mind can handle criticism without immediately becoming defensive. A calm mind can experience failure without believing that failure is the end. A calm mind can face uncertainty without creating hundreds of imaginary disasters. Imagine someone criticizing you. A restless mind may immediately become angry. It may think, "How dare they speak to me like that?" Then anger creates more anger, and one sentence becomes a full argument inside your head. But a calm mind creates a pause. You hear the criticism. You breathe. Then you ask, is there something useful here? If there is, you learn. If there is not, you let it go. This does not mean allowing everyone to disrespect you. It means you choose your response instead of allowing someone else's words to control your emotions. That is strength. Real strength is not always loud. Sometimes strength is the ability to remain quiet when reacting would only make things worse. Sometimes strength is walking away from an unnecessary argument. Sometimes strength is admitting that you were wrong. Sometimes strength is listening when your ego wants to speak. Meditation helps develop this kind of strength because every meditation session teaches you the same lesson. Notice what happens. Do not react immediately and return to the present. This practice may seem simple, but it becomes powerful when repeated. Every time your mind wanders and you bring it back, you are practicing control. Every time you notice an emotion without immediately acting on it, you are practicing self-control. Every time you sit through a moment of discomfort instead of escaping, you are building resilience. Slowly, these skills begin appearing outside meditation. You become less reactive in conversations. You become more patient when waiting. You become more thoughtful before making decisions. You begin realizing that not every emotion deserves an immediate action. This is especially important because modern life constantly competes for your attention. Your phone wants your attention. Social media wants your attention. Advertisements want your attention. Other people's opinions want your attention. Fear wants your attention. Regret wants your attention. If you give your attention to everything, you will have very little left for the things that truly matter. Meditation helps you reclaim your attention. Imagine your attention as a valuable currency. Every minute you spend worrying, comparing, scrolling, and overthinking is a minute you cannot use for learning, creating, working, or connecting with someone you love. This does not mean you must never relax or enjoy entertainment. It means you become conscious of where your attention is going. You stop allowing the world to decide everything you think about. You begin making choices. This is one reason meditation can improve focus. When you sit down and focus on your breath, your mind will wander. You notice it. You return. Then it wanders again. You return again. That process is not a failure. That process is the exercise. Think about lifting weights. Nobody becomes physically strong by lifting a weight once. Strength comes from repetition. Your attention works the same way. Each time you return, you strengthen your ability to focus. Over time, You may notice that you can read longer without checking your phone. You can listen to someone without preparing your reply while they are speaking. You can study without constantly searching for distractions. You can work on one task without feeling the need to jump between 10 different things. Focus becomes a skill, and meditation helps you train it. This can make an enormous difference for anyone learning English. Many learners believe they need a special talent to become fluent, but often the real challenge is consistency. They study for one day with great excitement, then disappear for a week. They watch a lesson but check their phone every few minutes. They listen to English but become discouraged when they do not understand everything. A calm and focused mind approaches learning differently. It says, I do not need to understand everything today. I only need to understand something more than I understood yesterday. This attitude creates sustainable progress. You listen carefully. You repeat sentences. You make mistakes. You correct them. You continue. Meditation can help you develop the patience required for this process. It teaches you to stay with the present moment instead of constantly demanding immediate results. This is a powerful lesson because many people quit, not because they are incapable, but because they become frustrated by the time required to improve. They want confidence immediately. They want fluency immediately. They want success immediately. But meaningful growth rarely works that way. A tree does not become tall in one afternoon. A skill does not become strong after one practice session. A peaceful mind does not appear after one meditation. Everything meaningful requires repetition. Meditation teaches you to respect repetition. It teaches you that small actions matter. 5 minutes today may not seem impressive, but 5 minutes repeated for months becomes a habit. A habit repeated for years becomes part of your identity. Suddenly, you are no longer someone who is trying to become calm. You are becoming a calm person. You are no longer someone who is trying to focus. You are becoming someone who knows how to direct attention. You are no longer someone who is trying to become disciplined. You are becoming someone who keeps promises to yourself. This is how transformation happens. It happens quietly. It happens through ordinary moments that nobody else notices. One morning, you choose meditation instead of immediately scrolling. One evening, you pause before responding angrily. One afternoon, you return to your work instead of giving in to distraction. One day, you speak English, even though you are afraid of making mistakes. Each moment seems small, but together, they create a completely different life. Daniel began to understand that his mind was not his enemy. He had spent years fighting his thoughts, trying to force himself to stop worrying, trying to eliminate fear, trying to become positive all the time. But meditation taught him something more realistic. He did not need to destroy negative thoughts. He needed to stop giving them unlimited power. A thought could say, you are not good enough. Daniel could notice it and respond, that is a thought, not a fact. A thought could say, you will fail. He could answer, maybe I will, maybe I will not, but I can still try. A thought could say, people will judge you. He could remind himself, people may judge me, but their opinions do not have to decide my life. This new relationship with his thoughts made him feel lighter. He began understanding that the mind often predicts danger because it wants to protect us. But not every prediction deserves belief. Sometimes the mind is simply afraid of uncertainty. Meditation teaches you to sit with uncertainty without immediately creating a story. You can say, I do not know what will happen, and I can still take the next step. This is one of the deepest forms of courage. You do not need certainty to move forward. You need enough calmness to accept that certainty is impossible. Daniel also discovered that meditation helped him face fear. Fear had controlled many parts of his life. He had avoided difficult conversations. He had delayed opportunities. He had remained silent when he wanted to speak. He had sometimes allowed other people's opinions to become more important than his own dreams. But meditation gave him a new way to respond. When fear appeared, he no longer immediately ran from it. He sat with it. He breathed through it. He noticed how the fear felt in his body. His heart might beat faster, his shoulders might become tense, his thoughts might become louder. Instead of saying, something is wrong with me, he learned to say, My body is experiencing fear, and I can allow this feeling to pass. This distinction was life changing. He realized that courage does not mean feeling nothing. Courage means feeling something and choosing your action consciously. A student can feel nervous and still raise a hand. An English learner can feel embarrassed and still speak. A creator can feel uncertain and still publish. A worker can feel afraid and still ask for an opportunity. A person can feel sadness and still continue living. Fear may be present, but it does not have to become the driver of your life. Meditation gives you the pause needed to take the steering wheel back. It also teaches you that emotions are temporary. No emotion stays forever. Anger rises and falls. Anxiety rises and falls. Excitement rises and falls. Sadness rises and falls. If you observe your emotions carefully, you begin noticing their movement. They arrive, become intense, and eventually change. The problem often becomes larger when we fight the emotion or build stories around it. Meditation teaches you to experience the feeling without adding unnecessary fuel. If you are angry, you notice anger. You breathe. You wait. You allow the intensity to decrease before deciding what to do. If you are anxious, you notice anxiety. You breathe. You return to the present. You remind yourself that you are here, now, and you can handle this moment. This does not solve every problem, but it prevents your emotions from making the problem worse. Slowly, Daniel became more comfortable with uncomfortable feelings. He no longer believed that every uncomfortable experience needed to be immediately removed. Sometimes discomfort was simply part of growth. Learning English was uncomfortable. Speaking in front of others was uncomfortable. Trying something new was uncomfortable. Setting boundaries was uncomfortable. Saying no was uncomfortable. But discomfort did not mean something was wrong. Sometimes it meant he was becoming stronger. This was another important lesson meditation gave him. You can be uncomfortable and still be okay. You can be nervous and still move. You can be uncertain and still begin. You can be imperfect and still make progress. Once Daniel understood this, he stopped waiting for perfect confidence. He realized that confidence often comes after action, not before it. You take the first step while your voice is shaking. You practice while you are still making mistakes. You continue while results are still small. Then, slowly, confidence grows. Meditation helps because it teaches you to remain present during those uncomfortable moments instead of immediately escaping them. This is how a calm mind becomes a courageous mind. It does not remove every storm. It teaches you how to stand in the rain without forgetting who you are. And as Daniel continued practicing, he discovered that the most powerful transformation was not happening during meditation itself. It was happening in the moments immediately after, when he returned to ordinary life and had the opportunity to choose differently. Daniel soon discovered that the real test of meditation was not what happened while he sat quietly with his eyes closed, but what happened when he opened his eyes and returned to ordinary life. It was easy to feel peaceful when there was no one around him. No difficult conversation, no deadline, no criticism, and no unexpected problem. The real challenge was carrying that peace into the moments when life became uncomfortable. One morning, Daniel arrived at work and discovered that an important project he had spent weeks preparing had failed. The results were much worse than expected, and his manager was clearly disappointed. Daniel immediately felt the familiar pressure rising inside him. His chest became tight. His mind began searching for someone to blame. He wanted to defend himself, explain everything, and prove that the failure was not his fault. But then something happened that would have been impossible for the old Daniel. He paused. He took a breath. He noticed the anger. He noticed the fear. He noticed the desire to react. Then he asked himself, what response will actually help me right now? That one question changed everything. Instead of becoming defensive, Daniel listened. He discovered that some of the criticism was unfair, but some of it was useful. There were mistakes he could learn from. There were decisions he could improve. There were things he had overlooked because he had been too confident in his original plan. In the past, his ego would have prevented him from accepting this, but meditation had taught him to observe uncomfortable thoughts without immediately obeying them. He could hear criticism without becoming criticism. He could admit a mistake without believing he was a failure. He could accept responsibility without destroying his confidence. Daniel thanked his manager for the feedback and asked what he could do differently next time. Later that day, he returned to his desk and began studying the project again. He felt disappointed, but he was not defeated. This was another lesson he had learned. Failure can hurt without becoming your identity. A failed project is an event. It is not a definition of who you are. A mistake is something you made. It is not everything you are. Meditation had given Daniel enough mental space to understand that difference. As the months passed, he noticed similar changes in other areas of his life. When someone interrupted him, he became less impatient. When traffic became slow, he stopped feeling that the entire day was ruined. When plans changed unexpectedly, he adjusted instead of becoming angry. When he received bad news, he allowed himself to feel disappointed without immediately imagining the worst possible future. These changes were not dramatic enough for other people to notice immediately, but Daniel could feel them. His life had not become perfect. His mind had simply become less controlled by every passing event. One evening, while sitting at home, Daniel received a message from an old friend. The friend had been struggling with personal problems and wanted to talk. Daniel agreed to meet. During their conversation, his friend spoke for nearly an hour about fear, disappointment, and confusion. Daniel listened carefully. He did not constantly check his phone. He did not interrupt with stories about himself. He did not rush to give advice. He simply listened. At the end, his friend said, "I don't know why, but talking to you makes me feel calmer." Daniel smiled because he knew something important had changed. The meditation he practiced alone was now affecting the people around him. His calmness was becoming something he could share. He realized that inner peace was not meant to be kept inside. It could influence conversations, relationships, families, workplaces, and communities. A calm person can create calm around them. Not always, and not perfectly, but often enough to make a difference. Daniel also began to understand the connection between meditation and discipline. At first, he had believed discipline meant forcing himself to do difficult things. But meditation taught him another definition. Discipline meant learning to return. If his attention wandered, he returned. If he missed a day, he returned. If he became discouraged, he returned. If he made a mistake, he returned. If he lost confidence, he returned. This simple idea became one of the most powerful principles in his life. You do not have to be perfect to be consistent. You simply have to be willing to begin again. Many people fail because they believe one mistake means they have ruined everything. They miss one day of exercise and quit. They make one mistake while learning English and stop speaking. They lose their temper once and decide they cannot change. They break a promise to themselves and give up completely. But meditation teaches a different approach. You notice that you wandered and you return. You notice that you made a mistake and you learn. You notice that you became distracted and you refocus. You notice that you reacted badly and you apologize. The power is not in never falling away. The power is in returning. Daniel began applying this idea to his English learning. He created a small daily routine. He would sit quietly for 5 minutes each morning. Then he would spend 15 minutes listening to English. After that, he would repeat sentences aloud and practice speaking. Sometimes he was busy and could only practice for 10 minutes. Sometimes he felt tired and wanted to skip everything. But instead of demanding perfection, he followed a simple rule: do something. If he could not practice for 30 minutes, he practiced for 10. If he could not read a long story, he read 1 page. If he could not speak for 15 minutes, he spoke for 2. The goal was not to impress himself with huge effort. The goal was to keep the connection alive. This approach slowly changed his relationship with learning. He stopped asking, "How quickly can I become fluent?" Instead, he asked, "How can I become slightly better today?" That question removed enormous pressure from his mind. He began enjoying the process. He noticed words he had previously missed. He understood sentences that once seemed difficult. He became less afraid of mistakes. He started speaking with people even when his grammar was not perfect. He discovered that confidence does not come from waiting until you are perfect. Confidence comes from repeatedly proving to yourself that you can survive imperfection. Every time Daniel made a mistake and continued speaking, he became a little braver. Every time he forgot a word and found another way to express himself, he became more flexible. Every time someone corrected him and he accepted it without shame, he became stronger. Meditation had helped him understand that learning was not a test of his worth. It was simply a process. This lesson extended far beyond English. Daniel began thinking about how often people stop themselves because they are afraid of looking imperfect. They do not start businesses because they fear failure. They do not speak because they fear judgment. They do not create because they fear criticism. They do not ask questions because they fear appearing ignorant. They do not pursue opportunities because they are afraid someone might say no. But meditation teaches you to observe fear without immediately obeying it. You can notice the fear and still take action. This is the beginning of courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move while fear is present. One afternoon, Daniel received an opportunity to speak at a small community event. The topic was personal growth and learning. His first reaction was to say no. Immediately, his mind produced reasons. He was not experienced enough. His English was not perfect. Other people might judge him. Someone might ask a question he could not answer. He almost rejected the invitation. Then he remembered his meditation practice. He sat quietly that evening and watched the thoughts move through his mind. He noticed the fear. He noticed the uncertainty. But he also noticed something else: excitement. Beneath the fear was a desire to try. Daniel realized that fear and excitement can sometimes feel similar. Both can make your heart beat faster. Both can make your body feel alert. The difference is often the story you tell yourself about the feeling. Instead of saying, "I am terrified because I will fail," Daniel told himself, "I am nervous because this matters to me." That small change gave him courage. He accepted the invitation. For several weeks, he prepared carefully. He practiced speaking. He meditated before rehearsals. He imagined standing in front of people and remaining calm. When the day arrived, his hands were still slightly nervous. His heart was beating quickly, but he did not run away. He took a slow breath and walked onto the stage. At first, his voice was not as strong as he wanted. He made a small mistake. For 1 second, his mind told him to panic, but he remembered to breathe. He looked at the audience and continued. After a few minutes, his nervousness began to settle. He became fully present. He stopped thinking about whether people liked him and started thinking about what he wanted to communicate. When he finished, the audience applauded. Daniel felt proud, but not because the presentation had been perfect. It had not been perfect. He felt proud because he had learned something more valuable. You do not need to wait until fear disappears before you act. You can carry fear with you and still move forward. This lesson changed the way he approached challenges. Whenever fear appeared, he began asking, "What would I do if I knew I could handle the outcome?" Sometimes the answer was to take action. Sometimes it was to wait. Sometimes it was to prepare more. But the question helped him separate genuine wisdom from unnecessary fear. Meditation also taught him to distinguish between accepting reality and giving up. Acceptance means seeing what is true without wasting energy fighting the fact that it is true. If something has already happened, you cannot change the past. You can learn from it, but you cannot rewrite it. If someone does not like you, you cannot control their feelings. If an opportunity disappears, you cannot force it to return. If a mistake has been made, you can apologize and improve, but you cannot undo the moment. Daniel realized that much of his previous stress had come from mentally fighting reality. He would replay old conversations, wishing he had said something different. He would worry about future events that had not happened. He would imagine different outcomes and become emotionally exhausted by possibilities. Meditation taught him to return to what was real. The past could teach him, the future could guide him, but the present was where he could act. This did not mean ignoring the future. It meant preparing for it without living inside it. It did not mean forgetting the past. It meant learning from it without becoming trapped there. Daniel began using a simple question whenever his mind became overwhelmed. What is happening right now? The question sounded simple, but it often brought him back from unnecessary anxiety. If he was sitting safely at home, then at that moment, he was safe. If he was studying, then his job was to study, not to solve his entire future. If he was speaking with someone, then his job was to listen, not to predict every possible outcome. This practice helped him understand the power of the present moment. The present is the only place where action is possible. You cannot act yesterday. You cannot act tomorrow. You can only act now. Meditation trains you to return to now. This is why it can be so powerful for people who overthink. Overthinking often means the mind is trying to solve a problem that cannot be solved through more thinking. You replay the same question again and again, hoping that another thought will finally give you peace. But sometimes the mind needs a break, not another argument. Meditation provides that break. It gives you permission to stop solving everything for a few minutes. You breathe, you sit, you notice, you return. Then, when you return to the problem, you may discover that the answer is clearer. Daniel began noticing that his best decisions rarely came when he was panicking. They came after he had allowed himself to become calm. This taught him an important principle. Never let a temporary emotional state make a permanent decision for you. When you are extremely angry, wait. When you are extremely afraid, breathe. When you are exhausted, rest before deciding that your entire life is failing. When you are overwhelmed, simplify the next step. Give yourself time to return to balance. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. As Daniel's awareness grew, he also became more careful about what he allowed into his mind. He realized that meditation could not completely calm a person who constantly filled their mind with chaos. If he spent hours consuming negative news, comparing himself on social media, arguing with strangers, and watching endless content, it became harder to feel peaceful. So, he began protecting his attention. He did not stop using technology completely, but he became intentional. He turned off unnecessary notifications. He stopped checking his phone immediately after waking. He created periods during the day when he worked without interruptions. He spent more time reading and less time endlessly scrolling. He started taking walks without headphones sometimes, simply observing the world around him. These changes seemed small, but they created more mental space. Daniel began realizing that peace is not only something you practice during meditation, it is also something you protect through the choices you make throughout the day. What you watch, what you listen to, what you repeatedly think about, and who you spend time with can influence your mental state. Meditation helps you become aware of these influences so you can choose more wisely. But Daniel knew there was still a deeper lesson waiting for him. He had learned to calm his thoughts. He had learned to improve his focus. He had learned to manage fear. He had learned to become more disciplined. Yet he had not fully understood the greatest question of all. What should he do with the peace he was building inside himself? One evening, after another long meditation session, Daniel received a message that would lead him toward the next stage of his journey. The message was simple, but it came from someone he had not heard from in a very long time. It said, I heard you have changed. I would like to meet you. Daniel stared at the screen, surprised by the words. He wondered who could have noticed such a change. Then he saw the name. It was someone from his past, someone connected to a painful chapter of his life, someone he had spent years trying not to think about. Suddenly, all the calmness he had practiced was being tested in a way he never expected. Daniel placed the phone on the table, closed his eyes, and took a slow breath. The old emotions returned immediately: anger, sadness, fear, regret. But this time, he did not run from them. He simply watched them. And somewhere beneath all those emotions, he understood that the next lesson of meditation was about to begin. Daniel stared at the message for a long time, remembering the person behind the name and everything that had happened between them. Years earlier, their relationship had ended with anger, misunderstanding, and words that could not be taken back. Daniel had carried the memory quietly, telling himself that he had moved on, but now he could feel the old pain returning. His first instinct was to ignore the message. Why open an old wound? Why allow someone from the past to disturb the peace he had worked so hard to build? But then Daniel remembered something meditation had taught him. Peace is not the same as avoidance. Avoiding a painful memory may make you feel safe for a while, but true peace comes when you can face the memory without allowing it to control you. So Daniel took a slow breath and asked himself what he truly wanted. He realized he did not need revenge. He did not need an apology to feel complete. He did not even need the other person to understand everything that had happened. What he wanted was freedom from the emotional weight he had carried for years. The next day, Daniel agreed to meet. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, and for a few moments neither person spoke. The silence felt heavy. Then the other person finally said, "I know I hurt you." Daniel listened. He felt his chest tighten, but he stayed present. He did not interrupt. He did not prepare an angry response. He simply listened. The conversation was not perfect. There were still disagreements about what had happened. There were memories each person remembered differently. But something had changed inside Daniel. He no longer needed to win the argument. He no longer needed to prove that he was right. He could acknowledge his own pain while accepting that he could not control another person's understanding. At the end of the conversation, they apologized for the things they had done wrong. It did not erase the past, but it changed Daniel's relationship with it. As he walked home, he realized that forgiveness was not always about saying everything was okay. Sometimes forgiveness meant refusing to carry the same anger into every new day. It meant releasing the hope that the past could somehow become different. It meant accepting what happened and deciding that it would not control what happened next. That evening, Daniel meditated longer than usual. He sat quietly and allowed memories to appear. Some were painful, some were beautiful, some made him feel regret. But instead of fighting them, he observed them. He understood that his life was not one single moment. It was a collection of experiences, and every experience had taught him something. Even the painful ones had helped him become more patient, more understanding, and more aware of the kind of person he wanted to be. He realized that his past was part of his story, but it was not the author of his future. This realization brought him a deep sense of peace. Over the following weeks, Daniel continued his practice, but now he began exploring a deeper question. What does it really mean to live with awareness? He discovered that awareness meant noticing the small moments he had previously ignored. It meant tasting his food instead of eating while staring at a screen. It meant listening to a friend without planning his reply. It meant walking outside and noticing the sunlight, the trees, and the sound of the wind. It meant looking at his family and appreciating them instead of assuming they would always be there. Meditation had taught him something that success had never taught him. Life was happening now. For years, Daniel had been waiting for the next achievement. He thought he would be peaceful after earning more money, after improving his career, after becoming fluent in English, after solving every family problem, or after reaching some imaginary future where everything would finally be perfect. But meditation showed him that there would always be another goal, another problem, another uncertainty. If he postponed happiness until everything was perfect, he might spend his entire life waiting. So he began appreciating progress while continuing to grow. He could want a better future without rejecting the present. He could have goals without becoming a prisoner of them. He could work hard without believing that his worth depended on results. This balance changed everything. Daniel still wanted success. He still wanted to improve his English. He still wanted to help his family and build a meaningful career. But now, his goals came from purpose rather than panic. He was no longer running away from who he was. He was growing toward who he wanted to become. This distinction gave him energy. One morning, Daniel's father asked him why he seemed different. "You still have problems," his father said, "but you do not seem as disturbed by them as before." Daniel smiled and answered, "I still feel stress. I still feel fear. I still become angry sometimes. I have simply learned that I do not have to become every emotion I feel." His father looked at him thoughtfully. Daniel continued, "I used to believe being strong meant never feeling weak. Now I think being strong means knowing what to do when you feel weak." His father smiled. Then, perhaps you have learned something important. Daniel knew he had. Meditation had not turned him into a person who never struggled. It had made him a person who knew how to return. Return to his breath, return to the present, return to his values, return to patience, return to courage, return after failure, return after anger, return after distraction, return after fear. This idea became the foundation of his life. Whenever something went wrong, he reminded himself that one difficult moment did not require him to abandon everything. If he lost his discipline, he could return. If he made a mistake, he could return. If he felt lost, he could return. If he became overwhelmed, he could return. The ability to return became more important than the ability to remain perfect. Daniel began sharing this lesson with others. He never presented himself as a meditation expert. He simply told people what he had experienced. He told students that meditation could help them focus before studying. He told English learners to breathe before speaking and not to fear mistakes. He told stressed workers to pause before reacting to difficult situations. He told people who overthought that not every thought deserved their attention. He told people who felt afraid that courage could exist alongside fear. He told people who struggled with discipline that starting again was not failure. And he told everyone the same thing: do not expect meditation to remove life from you. Let it help you become more present for life. Eventually, Daniel's daily routine became simple. He woke up, drank some water, and sat quietly for 5 minutes. He focused on his breathing. Sometimes his mind was calm. Sometimes it was noisy. Sometimes he felt peaceful. Sometimes he felt restless. He stopped judging the experience. He understood that every meditation session did not have to feel beautiful. Some days were difficult. Some days were easy. The goal was simply to show up. After meditating, he practiced English. He listened carefully, repeated sentences, read short stories, and spoke aloud. He no longer became ashamed of mistakes. Instead, he treated mistakes as information. If he made a mistake, he learned from it. If he forgot a word, he searched for another way to express himself. If he struggled with pronunciation, he practiced again. His progress became steady because his mind was no longer demanding perfection. Months turned into years, and Daniel's English improved dramatically. One day, he realized that he was having a conversation in English without translating every sentence in his head. He paused afterward, amazed. He remembered the person he had once been, the person who was afraid to speak because he believed every mistake would expose him as inadequate. Now he understood that the fear had never been as powerful as he had imagined. The real barrier had been his relationship with the fear. Once he stopped treating mistakes as disasters, learning became easier. This was another lesson meditation had taught him. Sometimes the problem is not the challenge itself. Sometimes the problem is the meaning we attach to the challenge. A mistake can mean I am stupid, or it can mean I have discovered something I need to practice. Failure can mean I should quit, or it can mean I have learned what does not work. Fear can mean I must stop, or it can mean this matters to me and I am ready to grow. The event may be the same, but the interpretation changes everything. Daniel became careful about the stories he told himself. He realized that the mind is constantly creating narratives. If you are not aware, you may believe every story your mind creates. Meditation helps you step back and ask, is this story true? Is it useful? Is there another way to see this? This does not mean pretending everything is positive. It means looking at reality with balance. If something is difficult, admit it. If you made a mistake, admit it. If you need help, ask for it. But do not add unnecessary suffering by telling yourself that one difficult moment means your entire life is hopeless. Daniel also learned the importance of compassion. He had spent years criticizing himself for every mistake. He thought harsh self-talk would motivate him to improve. Instead, it often made him afraid to try. Meditation showed him that kindness and discipline could exist together. You can hold yourself accountable without hating yourself. You can admit that you need to improve while still respecting yourself. You can say, I made a mistake and I will do better, instead of, I am a terrible person. This difference changed the way he treated others as well. When people made mistakes, he became more patient. When someone was struggling, he tried to understand before judging. He realized that everyone was carrying something invisible. The person who looked angry might be hurting. The person who seemed lazy might be exhausted. The person who appeared confident might secretly be afraid. Awareness did not mean excusing harmful behavior, but it helped him respond with wisdom instead of automatic judgment. One afternoon, Daniel returned to the place where he had first met the old man. The tree was still there, and the bench looked almost exactly the same. He sat down and closed his eyes. After a few minutes, he heard footsteps. He opened his eyes and saw the old man standing nearby. Daniel smiled. "I wondered if I would see you again," he said. The old man sat beside him. "You came back," he replied. Daniel laughed softly. "I always come back now." The old man looked pleased. "Then you have learned," Daniel asked. "Learned what?" The old man looked toward the sky and said, "That meditation is not about escaping from life. It is about becoming awake enough to live it." Daniel remained silent. The words felt familiar, but now he understood them differently. Being awake meant noticing the present. It meant seeing the person in front of you. It meant hearing the words someone was actually saying instead of hearing only what you expected. It meant recognizing your thoughts without becoming trapped in them. It meant feeling emotions without allowing them to become your identity. It meant appreciating ordinary moments before they disappeared. The old man continued, "Many people meditate because they want peace, but eventually they discover something deeper. Peace is not the reward at the end of meditation. Peace is a skill you practice while living." Daniel thought about all the moments when he had used meditation outside his practice. The angry conversation where he paused, the failed project where he listened, the presentation where he breathed through fear, the painful meeting where he chose forgiveness, the English mistakes where he continued instead of quitting, the difficult days when he simply returned. He understood that every moment had been part of the practice. The old man stood up and said, "Now, you must remember one final thing. Do not become attached even to your peace. Life will still challenge you. You will still lose your patience sometimes. You will still become afraid. You will still make mistakes. The goal is not to become someone who never falls. The goal is to become someone who knows how to rise." Daniel thanked him. Then he watched the old man walk away. He sat beneath the tree for a while longer, breathing slowly. He understood that his journey was not finished. Perhaps it would never be finished. There would always be something new to learn, something new to face, something new to understand. But he was no longer afraid of that. He had learned that life did not need to be perfectly controlled to be meaningful. It only needed to be lived with awareness. From that day forward, Daniel carried meditation with him wherever he went. When he woke up, he remembered to appreciate the new day. When he worked, he tried to give his full attention to the task in front of him. When he spoke with someone, he tried to truly listen. When he felt anger, he paused. When fear appeared, he breathed. When he failed, he learned. When he succeeded, he remained grateful. When his mind became distracted, he returned. When life became difficult, he reminded himself that difficult moments were temporary. And when he felt lost, he returned to the simplest truth he had learned: one breath, one moment, one step at a time. Perhaps this is what meditation can offer you too. It cannot guarantee that you will never experience stress. It cannot promise that every problem will disappear. It cannot make you successful without effort. It cannot replace action, learning, discipline, or responsibility. But it can help you become the person who faces those things with greater calmness and clarity. It can help you notice when your mind is running away with fear. It can help you pause before reacting. It can help you focus on what matters. It can help you accept what you cannot control and act on what you can. It can help you become patient enough to learn, brave enough to try, and disciplined enough to continue. You do not need to meditate for hours. You do not need special equipment. You do not need to become a spiritual master. Begin with 5 minutes. Sit comfortably. Breathe naturally. Notice your thoughts. Let them come and go. When your mind wanders, return. Do not become angry with yourself. Returning is the practice. Then carry that awareness into your day. When someone speaks, listen. When you work, focus. When you feel fear, breathe. When you make a mistake, learn. When you become distracted, return. When you lose your way, begin again. Over time, these small moments will shape the person you become. You may notice that you react less quickly. You may discover that you can focus longer. You may become more patient with yourself. You may become more confident when speaking. You may stop allowing every negative thought to control your mood. You may begin appreciating simple moments that once seemed meaningless. You may discover that happiness does not always require something new. Sometimes it requires noticing what is already there. The sunlight entering your window, the sound of someone you love laughing, a quiet morning, a peaceful breath, the opportunity to learn something new, the chance to begin again. These moments are easy to miss when the mind is constantly racing toward the next thing. Meditation teaches you to stop running for a moment and notice that you are already alive. This may be its greatest gift. Not a life without problems, but a mind capable of meeting problems without losing itself. Not a life without fear, but the courage to move while fear is present. Not a life without mistakes, but the wisdom to learn from them. Not a life without uncertainty, but the patience to take the next step without knowing everything. Not a life without pain, but the strength to experience pain without allowing it to destroy your hope. Daniel finally understood that the power he had been searching for had never been somewhere outside him. It had been quietly waiting beneath the noise of his own mind, beneath the fear, beneath the comparison, beneath the endless thoughts, beneath the pressure to become someone else. He had simply needed to become still enough to notice it. And perhaps the same is true for you. Maybe you do not need to become a completely different person. Maybe you need to return to the person you already are beneath all the noise. Maybe your confidence is still there, waiting for you to stop listening to fear. Maybe your focus is still there, waiting for you to stop feeding every distraction. Maybe your courage is still there, waiting for you to take one small step. Maybe your peace is still there, waiting for you to breathe. So tonight or tomorrow morning, give yourself 5 quiet minutes. Put your phone away. Sit down. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Take a slow breath. Notice what is happening inside you. Do not fight your thoughts. Do not judge your emotions. Simply observe. And when your mind wanders, return. Return to your breath. Return to the present. Return to yourself. Then open your eyes and carry that awareness into your life. Speak with patience, listen with attention, work with focus, learn without fear, love without taking people for granted. Forgive when you are ready. Set boundaries when necessary. Rest when you need to. Begin again whenever you fall. Remember that you do not have to solve your entire life today. You only need to handle this moment. One breath, one choice, one action, one peaceful step. That is how a life changes. Not always through dramatic events, but through small decisions repeated consistently. And perhaps one day, when you look back, you will realize that the 5 minutes you once thought were insignificant became the beginning of something extraordinary. You will realize that meditation did not remove your problems. It changed the person facing them. It did not make you fearless. It made you courageous. It did not make you perfect. It made you patient with your imperfections. It did not give you control over everything. It taught you what was actually worth controlling. It did not take you away from life. It brought you closer to it. And that is the true power of meditation. The power to become calm without becoming passive, focused without becoming obsessed, disciplined without becoming harsh, confident without becoming arrogant, and strong without becoming cold. It is the power to remain human while becoming wiser about how you live. So, if your mind is tired, breathe. If your heart is heavy, pause. If your thoughts are racing, return. If you are afraid, remember that fear does not have to decide your future. If you have failed, remember that you can begin again. If you feel lost, take one step. You are not required to know the entire path before you start walking. Sometimes clarity comes after movement. Sometimes confidence comes after action. Sometimes peace comes after you stop fighting the present. Your journey will not always be easy, but you can learn to walk it with greater awareness. And perhaps the most beautiful thing you will discover is that the strength you were searching for was never far away. It was inside you all along, quietly waiting beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, patiently waiting for the moment when you would finally become still enough to hear it. So, begin today. Sit, breathe, observe, return, and then live. Because the real meditation begins when you open your eyes.